Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that every person you love has been told you are broken. Not angry, not rebellious, not difficult. Broken. Chemically, biologically, irreparably. You walk into your kitchen and your mother looks at you with a terrifying kind of pity. You go to work and your colleagues stop talking when you enter the room. You try to explain that you're fine, that you just want a world that makes sense, a world where people aren't treated like disposable tools. And they just nod, exchange a look, and scribble a note on a clipboard. This is the ultimate nightmare. It's not being hunted, it's being erased while you're still breathing. It's called social gaslighting. And 60 years ago, in the heart of the Soviet Union, the state turned this nightmare into a science. They called it sluggish schizophrenia. It was a diagnosis for the sane who refused to lie. And today, as we navigate a world that treats relationships like stock market trades and human beings like biological products, that diagnosis has returned. It just has a different name now. Welcome to Outer Enigma. Today we are stepping inside the Serbsky Institute to see how they stole the minds of the righteous and how you can stop them from stealing yours. In the 1960s, the USSR had a branding problem. The world was watching. They couldn't just send every poet, philosopher, and human rights activist to a frozen gulag anymore. It made the communist utopia look like a prison. So they recruited the doctors, specifically a man named Andrei Snezhevsky. He was the director of the Institute of Psychiatry of the Academy of Medical Sciences, a man of prestige, a man of science. Snezhevsky developed a theory that was as brilliant as it was evil. He argued that schizophrenia didn't need to have florid symptoms. No hallucinations, no word salad, no disorganized behavior. He called it schizotypal, or sluggish schizophrenia. The symptoms were a masterpiece of ambiguity. Listen to these carefully because you might recognize them in your own life. 1. Social withdrawal. 2. An overestimation of one's own importance. 3. A stubborn pursuit of the truth. 4. Pessimism regarding the progress of society. Do you see what he did? He took the traits of a hero, integrity, deep thinking, and a refusal to ignore corruption, and he labeled them as early-stage madness. If you didn't like the system, you weren't a dissident. You were a patient who didn't know he was sick. This was the architecture of delusion. The moment you were diagnosed with sluggish schizophrenia, you lost your legal rights. You couldn't vote. You couldn't work. You couldn't even marry. You were a non-person. But the most terrifying part was the treatment. In the special psychiatric hospitals, or SPHs, the doctors weren't there to heal. They were there to break. They used a drug called sulfazine. It was essentially elemental sulfur in oil. It served no medical purpose other than to cause a massive artificial fever. Imagine your body temperature spiking to 104 degrees. Your bones feel like they are being crushed in a vice. You are shivering so hard you break your own teeth. And as you lie there, the doctor stands over you and asks, "Do you still think the state is lying to the people? Do you still feel so stubborn?" If you said yes, they gave you another dose. If you said no, they congratulated you on your recovery. They forced you to admit that your morals were just a hallucination. The system didn't just want your silence. It wanted to erase the very things that made you human. This was the fate of the brilliant. History remembers men like Leonid Pliushk, a mathematician who was systematically dismantled because he refused to let the state define reality. For the crime of wanting the law to matter, he was turned into a ghost. And in these wards, that ghost became your only companion. They sent the dissidents to the Dnepropetrovsk asylum. For years, they pumped them full of haloperidol, a powerful antipsychotic. It didn't just sedate them, it erased them. Victims described it as a chemical wall rising between the soul and the world. You lose the ability to read. You lose the ability to think. You can even lose the memory of the faces of the people who love you. The doctors would tell the families that the patient was improving because they had stopped talking about human rights. They had stopped being a dissident. They had finally become a useful gear in the machine. Now, look at the world we live in today. Look at the jungle rules that dominate our modern culture. We are told every single day that human beings are just utilities. We are told that men are only valuable for their bank accounts and what they can provide. We are told that relationships are just market value exchanges. And if you reject that, if you say that you want a teammate, if you say that you believe in a love that isn't transactional, if you say that human beings have intrinsic value regardless of their utility, the modern world doesn't send you to the Serbsky Institute, but it uses the same gaslighting. It tells you that you are delusional. It tells you that you are unrealistic. It tells you that your desire for a pure, deep connection is a symptom of being low value. They are trying to sluggish schizophrenia your soul. They are trying to pathologize your humanity so that you'll stop demanding more from the world. Think about the third wave experiment from 1967. Within days, an entire school was turned into a mini dictatorship. Why? Because the students were told that discipline and utility were the only paths to greatness. They were told that the outcasts, the ones who didn't fit the mold, were a threat to the group's success. This is the transactional trap. It's the belief that if someone isn't useful to you, they don't exist. It's the same logic the Soviet doctors used when they wrapped patients in the wet mop. The wet mop was a canvas sheet soaked in water and wrapped around a patient's body until it was bone dry. As it dried, it shrank. It squeezed the chest. It made it impossible to expand the lungs. It was a physical manifestation of what a transactional society does to the heart. It squeezes the life out of you until you stop trying to breathe. But remember Harry Harlow's monkeys. This is the proof. This is the evidence that the experts are wrong. Harlow gave those infants a useful mother made of wire and a useless mother made of cloth. If the transactionalists were right, the monkeys would have stayed with the wire mother. She had the food. She had the utility. But they didn't. They chose the cloth. They chose the warmth. They chose the hug. Because the need for a teammate, the need for a bond that isn't based on what you can get, is the most fundamental part of being a living creature. When you feel isolated because you reject the shallow, transactional culture around you, you aren't being pessimistic. You are being a monkey choosing the cloth. You are being sane in a world that has forgotten how to feel. The Soviet Union fell not because of missiles, but because the lie of sluggish schizophrenia couldn't hold forever. Eventually, the doctors themselves realized they were the ones who were sick. There is a future waiting for you. A world built on a different foundation. A sanctuary where the cold jungle rules have been replaced by a deep human contract. A place that values the soul over the spreadsheet and the person over the product. A place where you can find a teammate who sees your heart, not just your utility. But to get there, you have to survive the gaslighting here. You have to refuse the diagnosis and keep your spirit intact. Vladimir Bukovsky once said that when they called him crazy, he laughed. He laughed because he knew that if the people who destroyed their own country called him insane, then he must be doing something right. If the people who treat love like a business transaction call you unrealistic, laugh. It means your heart is still beating. It means you haven't been wrapped in the wet canvas yet. It means you are still free. You are not a biological robot. You are not a low-value utility. You are a human being with the capacity for a love so deep it would make a Soviet doctor's head spin. The Serbsky Institute is a ghost. The jungle is a choice. And this sanctuary isn't just a physical location, it's the state of mind you reach when you finally stop letting the broken define what it means to be whole. Don't take the medicine. Keep your eyes open. Stay human. Stay real.